When the bride walked down the aisle, holding the hand of a man everyone recognized from the streets, the entire hall turned into a storm of whispers and laughter. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others smirked, and a few openly mocked. But Amara walked with a proud smile, her grip on David's hand firm, her heart stronger than the storm of judgment around her. What no one in that crowd knew was the journey that brought her here, a journey that would silence every cruel voice before the day ended. Amara had always been different. Growing up, she had opportunities, education, and family support, but her soul longed for something deeper than appearances or money. She watched her peers chasing partners who could provide status and luxury, yet she always believed love should be pure, free of masks and material greed. Her friends teased her, saying she was too dreamy and would one day regret her idealism. She simply smiled and kept her faith. David's story was one no one in that church had cared to know. To them, he was only the ragged man who sometimes asked for coins near the bus station, the man with a tired face and clothes worn thin by the seasons. They never saw the dignity in his eyes, the warmth in his voice, or the mind filled with wisdom. Years ago, David had been a music teacher, admired by his students and respected in his community. His mother's illness drained his savings, but he chose to stay by her side until her final breath. Just when he thought he could rebuild, the woman he trusted most betrayed him, leaving for someone wealthier. Grief and financial ruin pushed him to the streets, where he learned hunger, loneliness, and humiliation, yet he never lost his kindness. One rainy evening, destiny tied his path with Amara's. She saw him huddled under a broken umbrella, his hands trembling as he tried to shield himself from the cold. Most people walked past, pretending not to notice. Amara stopped. She bought him warm food and sat beside him, speaking gently as though he were no different from any man she might meet at a cafe. That conversation lit a spark. David's humor, intelligence, and honesty stunned her. Unlike the men she had dated, he didn't try to impress her, he listened, truly listened. She went home that night with her heart unsettled, unable to forget his eyes. Days turned into weeks, and Amara returned often. She brought food, but more importantly, she brought conversation, laughter, and hope. He told her about his past, his lost dreams, and the pain that had shaped him. She told him about her struggles with family expectations and her longing for real love. Their bond grew quietly but powerfully, like roots deepening beneath the soil. When she confessed to her friends that she admired David, they laughed in her face. "You? The prettiest one among us? With him? A beggar?" Her family was harsher. Her mother insisted she deserved a man of standing. Her father said she was embarrassing the family name. But Amara's heart was unshakable. She saw beyond his clothes and his circumstances. She saw the man who gave away his last piece of bread to another hungry soul, the man who spoke of music like it was life itself, the man who looked at her not as a prize, but as a partner. So she made her decision. She told David she wanted to marry him. At first, he resisted, ashamed of what little he had to offer. But Amara silenced his doubts with one line: "I don't need riches. I need a heart that won't abandon me." Her certainty left him no room to hide. The announcement exploded like wildfire among her relatives and community. Some accused her of losing her mind, others speculated she was under some spell. Invitations were received with smirks, many agreeing to attend just to witness the spectacle. Even her father, in his anger, refused to walk her down the aisle. Still, Amara moved forward. She believed love, once chosen, must be defended with courage. On the wedding day, the church was filled, but not with the joy and excitement that usually accompany such a celebration. Instead, it buzzed with gossip. Guests pointed at David, who wore a borrowed suit that didn't quite fit, his shoes scuffed but polished with care. Some whispered about the shame of it all, others chuckled under their breath. Yet when Amara entered, holding his hand, her glow outshone every sneer. She walked proudly, her head held high, her eyes fixed on the man she chose. The ceremony began, but cruelty could not stay silent for long. As the priest spoke, muffled giggles echoed through the hall. Someone muttered loudly enough for many to hear, "She's marrying trash." A ripple of laughter followed. David's hands trembled, his chest tightening with humiliation. For a moment, he wondered if he should have let her go, spared her this ridicule. But then he felt Amara squeeze his hand, whispering, "Ignore them. I chose you." Her words steadied him like an anchor in a storm. As the time came for vows, the whispers grew bolder, mocking murmurs filling the air. David looked at Amara, then at the crowd, and something within him rose. He asked the priest for the microphone. The guests leaned back, smirks on their faces, expecting to hear a stammering fool embarrass himself further. Instead, they were about to hear the truth they had never imagined. David's voice, though shaky at first, carried a quiet power. He began by thanking everyone for coming, even those who had come only to mock. Then he told them who he truly was. He spoke of his years as a teacher, of the students he had guided, of the music that once filled his home. He told them of his mother's illness, how he spent every last coin to care for her, and how he held her hand as she took her final breath. He spoke of betrayal, of the wife who walked away, and of the spiral that left him on the streets. Silence slowly replaced the giggles. Then he said, "Yes, I am homeless today, but I am not worthless. I lost everything I owned, but not my dignity. I may not have riches, but I have a heart that still loves, still gives, still hopes. And this woman beside me saw that when the rest of you only saw rags." The laughter stopped completely. The hall was quiet enough to hear the echo of his words. People shifted uncomfortably, realizing the cruelty of their judgment. David's hand trembled less now. Amara's eyes filled with tears, pride radiating from her like light. That moment marked a turning point. The man they had ridiculed stood tall, his truth piercing every shallow heart in that room. And though the ceremony had begun in ridicule, it was ending in the undeniable power of love and courage. The crowd held its breath as David lowered the microphone. His words hung heavy in the air, stripping away every layer of arrogance that had filled the room. For the first time since the ceremony began, no one laughed. Faces that had mocked now looked uneasy, eyes darting away to avoid his gaze. Amara stood taller than ever, her hand still clasped with his, her eyes glistening with tears of pride. But David wasn't finished. He raised the microphone once more, and his voice gained strength. "I have nothing to offer this woman but honesty, loyalty, and love. Yet in a world that worships gold and appearances, she chose me. Ask yourselves why. She saw what you refused to see. And that makes her richer than any of you who think wealth defines worth." His words cut through the silence like a blade, firm but never bitter. He wasn't lashing out, he was teaching them. The whispers were gone now, replaced by stillness. A few guests lowered their heads in shame. Amara's relatives, who had been the loudest critics, shuffled uncomfortably in their seats. Even her father, who had refused to walk her down the aisle, was wiping at the corners of his eyes. David reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. When he opened it, the crowd leaned forward, expecting to see a cheap imitation of a ring. Instead, what he held was something crafted with his own hands, a simple band carved from polished wood, shaped with patience and care. He lifted it gently and said, "I made this myself. It may not sparkle, but it carries every moment of my effort, every beat of my heart. Because love should not be bought. Love should be built." The weight of his sincerity brought Amara to tears. She took the ring as if it were made of diamonds and whispered, "This is more precious to me than gold." Her words cracked the last wall of judgment in that room. Suddenly, what had seemed a shameful union began to look like the purest form of love. Just as the priest prepared to continue, the back doors of the church opened. All heads turned as a man in a tailored suit walked in. His presence commanded attention, his stride confident but respectful. He paused near the aisle, and with a voice strong enough to carry, he said, "Excuse me, but I must speak." Murmurs filled the room again, though this time they carried curiosity, not ridicule. The man looked at David and smiled. "You may not remember me, sir, but I remember you. Years ago, I was one of your students. I was lost, angry, and close to giving up. But you, Mr. David, you taught me not just music, you taught me discipline, patience, and faith. Everything I am today, I owe to you." He paused, then turned to the crowd. "This man you laugh at once shaped lives. He shaped mine. And if not for him, I would not be standing here as a successful man today." Gasps rippled across the hall. The judgmental expressions vanished, replaced by astonishment. The student continued, "I came today to see if it was true that my teacher was marrying. I didn't expect to see people mocking him. Shame on anyone who cannot see the treasure standing before them." In that instant, the room shifted entirely. People who had come to ridicule now stared at David with newfound respect. The student approached, embraced him, and said quietly, "You are not forgotten, sir. The world may have stripped you of possessions, but you still hold greatness." Amara's father rose to his feet, his pride breaking down under the weight of truth. He walked toward the altar with heavy steps, his eyes wet with regret. When he reached his daughter, he placed his trembling hand on hers and said, "I was blind. I thought love was measured in wealth, but today I see it measured in courage. Forgive me for doubting you, my child. Forgive me for judging you, David." The moment melted years of stubborn pride. Amara wept as her father placed her hand gently back in David's, now giving her away with dignity. The vows were spoken with voices unshaken by doubt. Every word from David and Amara resonated through the church, not just as promises to each other but as lessons to everyone present. When the priest declared them husband and wife, the applause that erupted was no longer mocking but genuine, a chorus of admiration and respect. The reception that followed was unlike what anyone had expected. Where guests once whispered cruel jokes, they now spoke softly of how wrong they had been. Some approached David, apologizing for their earlier behavior. Others praised Amara for her courage. But the most memorable moment came when David was asked to say a few words that he took the microphone again, not with hesitation this time but with calm confidence. "I may not own riches, but I carry something more enduring. My love for this woman, my gratitude for life's second chances, and my faith that kindness never goes unnoticed. Today you witnessed laughter turn into silence, and silence turn into respect. That is the power of truth." Then, without warning, David began to sing. His voice was deep, soulful, filled with emotions that words alone could not hold. The song he had written for Amara spoke of storms weathered, of light found in darkness, of love that healed wounds too deep for the eye to see. The room was spellbound. Many guests had tears streaming down their cheeks. Amara's mother, once skeptical, now sobbed openly, whispering, "I was wrong, so wrong." When the song ended, silence lingered for a moment before thunderous applause filled the room. Amara kissed him, whispering, "You've given me the greatest gift, a love the world cannot break." As the evening drew on, the former student approached David once again. He said, "Sir, I run a company now, and I would be honored if you would join us, not just as an employee but as a mentor. The world needs your wisdom. Let me help you rebuild." David's eyes widened, humbled by the offer. He shook his head gently at first, but the student insisted. "Please, let this be my way of repaying you." Finally, David nodded. "I don't need riches, only the chance to give again. If this allows me to share what I know, then I accept." The room erupted in cheers. It was as though the universe itself had decided to reward his faith and humility. By the end of the night, the marriage that had begun under ridicule had transformed into a celebration of resilience, love, and redemption. Amara and David didn't leave with bags of gifts or promises of wealth. They left with something far greater, the respect of those who once doubted them, the blessing of family who had opposed them, and the knowledge that their love had silenced an entire world of judgment. As they stepped out into the night, hand in hand, Amara whispered, "Do you see now? You were never poor in my eyes. And David, smiling for the first time in years without the weight of shame, replied, and you've made me the richest man alive. Their story spread beyond the walls of that church. It became a reminder whispered in homes, shared in conversations, retold as a lesson, that true wealth is not measured in coins or possessions but in the depth of love, the strength of character, and the courage to stand tall when the world tries to push you down. Those who once laughed now carried the memory of their own cruelty, and those who had witnessed it carried the lesson of humility. For Amara and David, life ahead would not be free of challenges, but they had already conquered the hardest one, the judgment of others. Their union stood as proof that sometimes the most beautiful love stories are the ones the world tries hardest to bury, and that the richest hearts are often found in the poorest clothes. And so the wedding that began as a joke ended as a legend, one that echoed long after the music faded and the lights dimmed, leaving behind a truth no one could deny: real love is unshakable, undeniable, and unbreakable.